Alright everybody, welcome back to another Ask a Dev Thoughts. This is a continuation of our crazy expensive character talk. I had promised that we would try to explore some other options like Fiverr and some cheaper test cases. And so that's what this video is all about. We are going to try to do a character not for $17,000, but somewhere on the average of 170 is kind of what I figured it ended up doing. Now, before we just hop in and start spending a bunch of money, it's worth pointing out a few things about the channel, and you may actually find this interesting from a different perspective if you're trying to start your own channel as well, for example. So since Ask a Dev monetized about a year ago, we've been doing this about 4 years now, but it finally monetized about a year ago. Ask a Dev averages about $100 a month on YouTube. So we're not really in this for the money, which also means that we truly survive based on Patreons and tips and everything like that. So super shout out for that. But it also means that I'm not in a huge rush to go spend a bunch of extra money on characters or art assets that I'm not actually going to be using. So from that standpoint, I am willing to spend some cash to see if we can't find, there's two things. One is an animated logo for another channel that I'm working on. And that's a whole other conversation. So we've got an animated logo. And then the second one is I do have a 3D character model that I'm working on for my own game that I'm kind of building, you know, my indie game that I'm building just like everybody else who's part of the community. So I'm willing to, from an opportunity cost standpoint, share those experiences with you all as we go. We are on a quest to see if we can find some hidden talent out there, to see if we can not spend 17 grand on a bottle, but maybe more like 170. So with that, let's hop in and break down the strategy of kind of what I sent to artists, how long they spent, what came back, we'll evaluate it, and so on. So first, let's break down the strategy and we'll go from there. Here we go. All right, so what is our strategy for how we're going to play this game? Basically, a lot of the community has been using Fiverr to get assets created and stuff like that, so I thought that might be a good platform to use. This is not a sign-off that you should be using Fiverr or any of those other things. This is just an example of a way you might approach this stuff. What we are looking for is we are looking for hidden talent. We're looking for unicorns, diamond in the rough, whatever you want to call it. Because there's a lot of people out on these platforms that are really just doing cookie cutter stuff. So that's my first quick strategy note. One, keep an eye out for the cookie cutter stuff. Now, also know there might be times when you use cookie cutter stuff, and usually you'll know because one, it's like 5 or 10 or 20 bucks, and usually when you send your stuff or you're looking at their stuff, everything's numbered. There's a number 1 through 500, and if you were to buy a package, you would get 5 logos, and you pick which 5 numbers you want, and they will take your logo and do it in that animation style in 5 different ways, for example. Or you pick 5 different animation styles, and that's what will come back depending on which package you get. These are very cookie cutters logos, and if you're just starting out and just want something that's not static, that may be a great use of $5 or $10 or $20. However, in this particular case, I was looking for something that was a lot more creative and a lot more unique. So if they had numbers, generally speaking, that was a method of elimination for me. Also, a lot of times when I would send them a note, if they immediately asked for vector graphics back, it generally meant that they weren't going to be able to help me. I had a Photoshop file. It was layered, but it was not vector graphics. So that was also a factor. It very quickly helped weed out who I was able to work with. The last bit in this particular case, when we're talking about the 2D logo, was animation style. I was looking at people's reels because I was looking for specific sense of animation timing, or something that showed evidence that they even had a sense of timing or style of their own. My experience in this and looking for these kind of things comes from basically interviewing tons of people, looking at reels over my career, as well as when I ran my own studio or my own little like independent shop for about 4 years. I spent a lot of time trying to find talent, and I learned a lot about what was on somebody's reel versus what they were able to do, and what kind of reels showed what people could do, etc. So I'm just bringing all of that to bear when I'm looking for the talent that I'm looking for. So with all that in mind, basically cast the net, and then based off the net, we'll see what comes back and see what we learn from it all. Now, there's a couple other things that I want to be clear on about this. I want to be super respectful of all the artists that I worked with in here. I'm not going to be doxing anybody. None of my critiques are meant to be anything but creative feedback or critical feedback. I've asked all of them not to post the logos so that you can't even find who worked on it. Now, if they go ahead and post it anyways, that's kind of their choice. In particular with the 3D models, I asked them not to post because it was all NDA and stuff like that. We'll see how well that holds up. I'm not really worried about NDAs in this particular case. Mostly I just want to be respectful of the individuals and artists involved in this particular case. So with that, we're casting our net, talking about the 2D logo setup. We have 4 different logos to take a look at, and we'll just go through each one of them, and I'll talk a little bit about what came back, how long it took, how much it cost, and then realistically at the end, you all can make your own decision as to what you think is best or best value for the money. And I will also let you all know what I ended up deciding to do, or what my ultimate choice was as well. So with that, let's take a look at logo number 1. Okay, before we go into logo 1, actually, I had one more thing to bring up. I want to give you the context that the artist was given. They were all given this logo design as a Photoshop file that was broken into layers and the following text. I am looking for custom animation for my logo. It's pretty simple. The idea is water drops onto the logo, leaves grow, and then the water drips from the bottom of the text. Is this something you can help me with if I send you the design? So that was the extent of the description I gave. My goal was not to be prescriptive. My goal was to see what they came up with, because I'm really trying to figure out, one of the hard things about looking at reels is when you look at a demo reel, you don't know how much of the work that individual did. And even if they did every single bit of it, what you don't know is you don't know how much work the supervisor or lead did to pull that creativity out of them. Did they bring that, or did the lead pull it out of them? And so one of the reasons I am not being prescriptive is because I want to see, do the art, what the artists bring with them. Do they understand the spirit of what it is we're going for here? So with that, now let's take a look at logo number 1. All right, so this logo the artist had, I think they'd estimated more than 5 days or so, but from the time that I approved start of work till the actual delivery came in was actually 3 days. It cost $126. Now, along the way, generally speaking, I was not beating people up with a bunch of notes and nitpicking a bunch of stuff, especially if I did not feel like they were going to get to the quality bar. That is not the point of my initial net casting when I'm doing these kinds of things. My point is to find the talent that understands the spirit of what it is they're doing and has style. Now, in this particular case, I gave 1 note because the background had been completely left off. And so I asked them to go ahead and at least put the background, the big circle, into the background if they could. The other reason that I like to give a note is because in addition to being able to execute in the craft and create something that's in the spirit of whatever it is the concept is, it's also really good to figure out how well they handle feedback and taking notes. Everybody I worked with all throughout in both the 2D and the 3D projects, they were all awesome about feedback. They were all highly communicative. And so that was never a problem throughout this process. So that is our first logo. Now, my evaluation of where this landed for $126, depending on what you would guesstimate a person's average hourly rate is based on our previous conversations, this is somewhere between 3 and 5 hours of somebody's time-ish. So in 3 or 5 hours, basically, they did, it moves. Everything moves. We don't have any raindrops. We don't have any dripping. you can see that the actual animation is literally just the layer scaling and the background scaling. So the animation is a little bit, there's not a lot of individual love put into the individual elements. You know, there's one drop, the leaves come up together, it's all pretty in tune. This was not quite what I was hoping for, in the sense that this didn't hit the spirit of what I was looking for, which was somebody who is, honestly, I'm asking a lot here. I'm looking for somebody who's going to hand animate all of this stuff and make it come through for $120, which is ridiculous. So I have very reasonable expectations that we're not going to find this diamond, but let's find out, and let's take a look at our next logo. Okay, so our next logo was 2 days, cost $20. I gave no notes. As you can see, they did hit the raindrops, the leaves growing, the text coming out, and the water dripping from below. Now, as you can see, much like the previous one, they basically just took the layers and they're basically scaling the layers over time. So once again, it's executed, but for $20, it would have probably, I mean, it would take you easily longer than that just to open the files and get it done. So for $20, this is actually, you know, stuff's moving. This is okay. You know, no huge complaints here. Now, it's also worth mentioning at this point too that every single one of these artists I tipped 20 to 50%, if not more, just as you know, thank them for their time, etc. Even though most of this work I'm not going to use, but are we going to find one that actually works for what exactly it is that I was thinking? So let's take a look at our next logo. All right, so this logo is actually a little bit of a cheat. You can hear we have audio, we have actual animation being done, raindrops are moving, all the elements are working, and we have dripping. It's basically everything I wanted. And the reason that is because this is one that I animated. So what happened was, about 3 logos in, I was a little bit concerned about not finding our hidden talent. And also I wanted to have some kind of control to figure out what the opportunity cost of me animating this would be, and how much time might I be saving if we do find this hidden talent. So I spent about 5 hours doing this logo, and I know exactly how many hours because I was timing it. The interesting thing about this was I also did all this in Toon Boom. So this is not an advertisement for Toon Boom. I had never used it before. So in addition to doing the animation and everything like that, I was trying to learn how to use a new program. I had tried to do it in Adobe Animate, but it was just too painful. Toon Boom works a lot more intuitively for an animator, in my opinion. Even though I was learning a brand new program, I was able to get to this logo in about 5 hours. So you can take that out, or at least I can take that out, figure out my hourly rate, and I know about what this would cost me or how much time savings I have. But as you can see, full animation, raindrops, music, etc., all in that 5 hour window. So with that, turns out we have 2 more logos to check out. So let's take a look at those real quick. All right, this logo took about 4 days. From the time I said approved the project to go till I actually received delivery. It cost $867.85. You can see there's a little bit more hand-drawn elements in the raindrop itself and a little bit with the leaves, but overall, the rest of it is really just about scaling the layers that were sent over, as opposed to creatively or actually creating animation. Once again, that is a tall ask for such low budgets, but like I said, I was hoping to find a hint of somebody who understood animation and timing and all of these things. So worth pointing that out. With that one, this one once again didn't really hit what I was looking for. So let's take a look at our next logo. All right, I think we've got something. But first, let's talk about some of the details. So this particular project, the individual took about 7 days. Once again, I don't know how much actual time was spent on that. And the total cost of this logo was $179.35. Now, the interesting thing about this one is it's actually animated. The artist went through and made their own elements. It has everything. It has the raindrops. It has the dripping. It has a sense of timing. It actually has music. So I think we found one. I think we found one of our hidden talent people. And I was pretty excited by this one for a lot of different reasons. Now, is it perfect? No, there's lots of things that I would potentially give notes on as far as variation of the drop sizes and things like that. I did not do that in this case because I thought but mostly I was just more excited to find somebody who I thought had the understanding of the spirit and the animation timing that I could work with going forward in the future. So this is the last of the logos that I sent out, the last of the nets that we cast. I think overall, you could kind of break down what you think is the best one based on what you saw in each of these logos. For me personally, I actually went and decided to hire this artist again. I was happy with what they had done in this last logo, and I asked them to do a variation as well as a transition, and then basically I snowballed it from there. Once I saw that they had the creativity and the actual animation timing and skills and spirit that I was looking for, I was happy to let them run with a couple other projects as well. So I've had them do some transitions as well. So now for my other channel, website, etc., I actually have the logo that I animated myself, as well as additional logos that I can use to mix and vary what's going on. So overall, I thought this particular exploration was a success because we found one of our hidden talents. It was looking a little bit slim as we were going, and basically, I'm not going to lie, the whole reason I animated this myself was because it didn't seem like we were going to get there. So that wraps up the 2D exploration that we did. Now let's take a look at what we did for 3D. Okay, so moving on to our 3D exploration, let's take a look at a couple of rules of the game this time around. So what we're starting with is we're starting off with a single concept. I found over time that sometimes it's great to have turns, they're called, where you have a front, side, and 3/4 view. But some artists, they get very distracted by making sure everything lines up as opposed to understanding the essence and the spirit of the character, and vice versa. I've seen where artists need the 3D view, but generally speaking, it costs a lot more to get a turn done. So if you can find an artist that can handle taking notes really well as just understands the spirit of the character and just has good fundamentals, I'm talking sculpture, anatomy, finishing, etc. I found over time that it is a lot more cost effective and time effective not to do turns in general. That's my own experience in all the jobs that I've hired for. So with that, this character, this is Zara. She is one of the player characters for the prototype game that I'm working on. She's the only one I have. And all I did was I sent this character. I asked people, hey, can you help me model this character for the purpose of being used in game? Now, generally speaking, a lot of them will ask what the quality bar, etc. I told them I'm not worried about quality, not quality bar as far as resolution, right? Did it need to be a closed model because oftentimes they're used to working with 3D printing. In this particular case, I told them not to worry about it. I was looking for just the sculpt and making sure that we hit the spirit of the character. Now, every single 3D model that I chose, the modeler that I chose to help me try, I went with the full premium package. And the reason I did that was because when I looked at the quality bar of the premium package, I felt like it was more on the level of what I was looking for. So with that context in mind, let's hop in and take a look at what came back and some of the progress along the way. Here we go. All right, for our first 3D model, we're gonna actually talk through these a little bit more because it's a little bit hard to bounce back and forth and talk through the process. This first artist came back, the total delivery time took 13 days, and this model costs $158. You can see the final result. Now, it is worth noting that once again, I did give one note along the way. In this particular case, when the first pass came back, I pointed out that the area around the pelvis, that was not actually a skirt. That was actually meant to be more like a quadruped hind quarters, and that was actually solid and represented by the fur of the character. So I gave that note along the way. Once again, I wanted to see how well artists I'm going to work with respond to notes. And once again, everybody was amazing about notes. They went ahead and they heard the notes. But even though I delivered that note, you can see what the final result was. Either I did not do a good job explaining that was not a skirt and it was a solid piece that just represented large fur volume, or their artist's interpretation just wasn't on the same line. So once again, in this particular case, the model did not come back in a way that was even close to where I was hoping to be for the quality bar. Again, we're only paying $158, so this is not a knock on the final delivery. $158 over 13 days, it's hard for me to know how much time was spent, but my expectations of what you can get to in $158, honestly, this is kind of what I would expect. There's just not enough time to do a good job. However, it is worth mentioning that the premium package visual quality did not line up with what this delivery was. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So with that, let's take a look at our second model. All right, so this is our second model, and this model took 11 days and it cost $189 for the final delivery. I did actually give two notes along the way with this one. The first note I gave was just that the artist sent a note saying, hey, what do you think of the progress so far? As you can see here, when I took a look at it, I didn't really know where to start, so I basically kind of broke it down, and I basically said right now that the head kind of looks more like a balloon as opposed to representing the structure of the design. They took those notes, and then the revision that came back, I gave actually one real creative note where I asked them to kind of take a look at where the eyes were on the head, basically where they were located on the head to kind of maximize that cuteness and appeal of the character. So with those two notes, you can see what the final model ended up looking like in the end. So overall, I only did two of these. These projects were a fair bit more expensive and they took a lot more time. The other reason was once I started seeing that the quality bar that was coming back wasn't going to quite hit the mark, combined with I want to take my own advice on this. I don't even have a playable prototype yet. What are we doing making art? So I'm only doing this for you all. I don't want to be spending time making art right now. I need to be making the game. So I didn't want to spend a lot of extra money on this right now, knowing that this would be a future and a bunch of stuff could change. So with that though, I did want to make a couple comments on the final delivery for these characters. For $189 or $158, this is about what, I was not expecting a lot. There's just not enough time to get there. However, there is a little bit of a disconnect for me. And one of the reasons I want to at least call this out is the difference between the quality of what I saw delivered versus what was shown in the premium packages. And the reason I picked these artists was because their premium package demo reels, there was fundamental understandings of structure, anatomy, style, finish in the polish. And so it almost felt like the disconnect for me here is it almost felt like a different person was doing the models than what I saw in the reel. And one of the reasons that I think that is also potentially supported is if the person who had done the reel had delivered that model, it was very clear that the skill that was done in the reel, they would have known that the model was not at the same level. And the disconnect for me was each of these artists was very excited by what they delivered, and they all asked could they put it on their demo reels. Once again, for reasons of I don't want to dox them, as well as just this is all pretty NDA right now. I don't want my stuff out there quite yet. I asked them not to do that. So hopefully they don't. But if they do, it's on them at this point. But overall, the disconnect there, someone who is excited by what they delivered cannot be the same person who their reels were honestly beautiful in some ways. So I was having a little bit of a problem with the disconnect there. And so I just wanted to call that out. I don't know for sure. Bottom line at the end of the day, though, we did not find our hidden talent as far as the 3D models go. I am almost ready to cut bait on this in the sense that I'm not going to continue looking for modelers right now, because this isn't what I need for where I am in the stage of my own prototype game right now. All right, so I'm not going to spend more money and time on this right now. However, I do have one more surprise artist for you. Okay, so I thought it would be a fun wrap up to this if we tried to take a look at what the trending AI solutions might be. So what I did is I did a bunch of research, and I kind of took a look at a couple of the top tier ones like Meshy and a few others. I'm not gonna go into which one I ultimately chose, but I did try them all, and specifically I ended up picking one that you actually had to pay for. So this 3D model that I'm showing you right now was created using it was a $16 credit system. And what I did is I basically all I did was upload my image, and you can see what came back. Now that you've seen that, knowing that that was $16, let's talk about this a little bit, okay? In some ways, this is much more in the spirit of the character, because let's call out what this is. This, if you looked at it from the side view, for example, it kind of looks like we just took a flat mesh and extruded it out, and we just gave it some sense of depth and then slapped the texture on there, front and back. And it's almost misleading in that way. It's almost like when you first block out one pose in an animation, it seems really good, but you still have a long ways to go. Or if you were to sculpt this out, there's so many things about this that don't actually work, right? There's no structure to the head, there's no depth to the tail or anything like that. However, if you check this out, what I've done here is I've actually taken that mesh and I've pushed and pulled and stretched it a lot more to see if I could turn that into something that was a little bit more representative of, the volume in the ears and the head, and I've pushed things back. There's no way this is usable, but maybe this could be used as a stepping stone to get to more of a finished character. And for $16 and zero effort, it's a pretty worthwhile step. It's also worth calling out, even though I wanted to get it retopologized, the retopology it's not there, not even close. It came back as a triangulated mess. And also worth pointing out, the density of this mesh is insane. So mostly I threw this in because I was curious myself. I wanted to see where we were in the whole 3D modeling AI thing. In some ways, it's actually pretty cool, and in other ways, it still has a long ways to go. So my overall final assessment on our 3D exploration is I'm going to still continue to be looking for talent to help me. Now, ultimately, I'm going to hire people that I've worked with before, who I know, because I spent time in the past finding people who understand the spirit and style of the character. And so I will work with their schedules and their budgets to hopefully hire those people to help me out with this project. But it was a worthwhile exploration to see where we were with Fiverr as well as with AI in this particular case, which was very interesting to me. And from there, so with that, let's wrap up this entire 170 average dollar character and put a bow on this. Okay, so that's where we landed. You saw all the final work. You can be the judge yourself in the end of what you think of the final deliveries. All in all, I was really happy with the fact that we did find some hidden talent on the 2D side. I now have somebody that I'm happy to work with and pay, fair rates and reasonable cost, and over tip them for what they're doing, because I appreciate the work that they're doing. And I think that I can get a lot closer to kind of what I'm looking for in my 2D logos and animations. On the 3D side, we didn't get there. I was not expecting to. I was not holding my breath that we were going to get there. The AI exploration was fun, but ultimately, as I mentioned, I'm definitely going to end up hiring the people that I know can hit the spirit of the characters that I've worked with before, if not top tier talent, because maybe by some crazy thing my actual prototype game will actually get somehow find some money to get made, and I can hire top tier talent like I want to do. But like all of you and like many of our community members, we're all in the same boat of trying to get a game out there that people are excited to play, and we got to prove ourselves out first. So one thing at a time. For now, I'm tabling the artwork for the game. I'm going to continue working on the hydroponics. That's actually for a hydroponics channel, by the way. I'm going to continue working on that. Hopefully you all found this video interesting, and at least it kind of explains some of the process I go through when I'm looking for these artists, and kind of gives you a sounding board / reality check of what I personally found based on my experiences, not only over time through the business, but also using Fiverr today. So as always, thanks for being the best part of this adventure, the community. I appreciate all of you help spreading the word, the Patreon support, etc. And I hope to see you in an upcoming live stream or an upcoming video, or even in Discord as part of the community. I hope everybody has an amazing rest of your day. Take it easy.